Rideshare company Lyft on Tuesday announced a new $5 minimum charge per ride for trips within the metro area. The same minimum was enacted by rival ride-hailing company Uber last year and is in line with a recommendation from a state. However, the change is unlikely to quell calls for increased pay and protections for drivers by driver group and elected officials who say drivers are underpaid and exploited. So this is like I think this is Minnesota or Minneapolis. I think is it Minneapolis, Minnesota? But they're the biggest city that are currently in the middle of a battleground for like better pay. They're striking their butts off. They had like one of the governors had to actually veto a change that was supposed to be happening. Uber and Lyft they're trying to make this change not happen. They're trying to have like new minimum mileage rates and minimum hourly pay for active time, similar to New York and Seattle. So they're fighting for that too. Last year, state lawmakers approved a plan that went further in increasing pay for drivers, but it was vetoed by Tim Walz, just told you guys, who established the task force instead. So the task force, and I think this is fine. I think as a government official, you should create laws based off of facts and statistics and not emotion. I do think that it was right for Tim to say, let's slow down, create a task force to figure out what the pay should actually be. But a percentage of my soul thinks, Uber and Lyft are in the pockets of Tim. It sounds crazy. It happens. I have no proof, but a percentage of my soul is wary about that. Tim Walz, who established the task force instead, a similar plan also included a $5 per ride minimum, which was approved by Minneapolis City Council in August, but Mayor Jacob Frey vetoed it. That's rough because I think $5 minimum is fair. It's not even that far from the $3 minimum in a lot of cities. He cited the unfinished work of the task force, which included drivers and representatives of the major ride-hailing companies known as transportation network companies. Last month, the task force completed its work, curious, but did not make recommendations on the most contentious issue, minimum pay rates, that would effectively boost hourly wages for drivers by establishing minimum rates per minute and per mile. At least one state lawmaker and several Minneapolis City Council members have said they plan to continue to push for such minimums to be codified in statute or ordinances. The task force did recommend establishing the $5 minimum charge for riders that begin and end in the metro area. So it's pay attention to the wording here. It says the task force did recommend. So Lyft increased it based off of the recommendation. So it's not a law. It's just something the task force recommended. Additionally, on Tuesday, Lyft also, and you know what? I want to focus on this task force a little more. In New York, they have something called the Taxi Limousine and Commission entity. It's kind of a government body that operates independent of like the state or the city. And they cater for both passengers and for riders. That's how they worked with the one of the government bodies of New York City to get that minimum wage floor going. So I've been telling other people, we kind of spoke a little bit about, should government be interfering with rideshare, or should we just, as independent contractors, let it happen how it happens? In fact, and I'll show you guys after this article, I went on Pedro DoorDash Santiago's podcast last night, where we talked about whether we agree or disagree if government should get their hands in rideshare. And I can see both sides, but I think that the structure of New York, where there's an entity that is the middleman between drivers and the government, I think that's working very, very well. So this task force, it's more government based than I would like for it to be, but I think it's a good idea for rideshare drivers. We do need some protections. I'm not saying we need to be employees. I do like being an independent contractor, but we're not as independent as an independent contractor should be. And if they're going to treat us, there's a percentage of our work that feels like being an employee. We can't set our rates, right? So there's a percentage of our work that makes me feel like an employee, and I would like a percentage of employee benefits if that has to be the case. So it can go back and forth. I'll show you what I said. I think I had a great response, but let's get through this. Additionally, on Tuesday, Lyft also announced it was launching a partnership with one of the most prominent groups representing drivers, the Minnesota Uber and Lyft Drivers Association, MULDA. That's an okay acronym. I give it a B-, in order to help navigate technical and disciplinary issues, including translating for East African immigrants and providing assistance in appealing their case if they get kicked off the platform. I assume there's a lot of East Africans in this community. That's very specific. MULDA provides an important voice for its members, and this collaboration is an opportunity for us to work on different issues facing the driver community. Lyft is excited to be moving forward with MULDA. You're only doing it because it was. I hate when they put out statements like, "Oh man, yeah, this was our plan the whole time." That's not the case. So that's like a forever happening thing in Minnesota. Every week, Minnesota is doing something that deserves to be on the podcast. So every week we talk about Minnesota in the house.